Hello, folks. Welcome to Inclusive Collective, where we share stories and learnings of inclusive people, organizations, and innovation. I am your co-host, Nadia, an organizational development and belonging strategist, and I'm joined by my best friend, Rob Hadley, a people and culture strategist specializing in DE&I and people analytics. Rob, it's good to be back this week with you.
How did I get to best friend status? I thought I was like in the lower tier, and then like almost like
you were
like I've been like
not the lower. You were like in
almost like Ted Lasso.
There's three tiers.
Just kept jumping leagues. Now I'm in the Premier League.
There's three tiers that I have, and you were in the second. You're like the top of the second. And then I heard an episode recently where you referred to me as your best friend, and I was like, oh. And so I was like, that is so cute. And then of course I got to see you and your family this past weekend in Utah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I missed being with you, Rob. Like, we worked together for so long, and then there was like a 7-year
And now you're considering moving to Utah, so that's great.
That's right. No, that's not right. It's not true. I think your wife wants me to. She was like showing me the guest room, and she's like, "This is your bedroom.
Come anytime, anytime." Yeah,
it was great. But I do want to, just for our listeners who may have missed last week's episode, I was out of the office. We did have my brother Assad, who is a co-host with you, who is a founder of Rifelion. And I just want to also mention that he had my 11-week-old niece who he was holding throughout the entire episode, which I'm so surprised by, because I can't believe she didn't make a peep. But I'm just curious, how did they do?
They did great. Isha did great, right? So if you look at the videos, you can clearly see Asa bouncing up and down as we're having the conversation. So it's a little bit jarring if you look at some of the videos out there on YouTube, where you can see him trying to ask a question and bounce at the same time. So they did great, and I think that hopefully they can both come back at some point.
Absolutely. So thank you, Assad, for guest hosting. It's not as easy as it looks, but you did a great job. So thank you for that. And then there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So Rob, as you know, I was in your home state last week, lovely Utah. I toured the mighty 5 national parks. I'm not really quite certain how we did all 5 in a week, but each of them were awesome in their own way, right? Like the terrain, the landscape. I do have reflections on my visit that I think I'm going to share on social media, so folks stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Just in a little blurb. But I also just wanted to share with our listeners that you, that of course, like I said, we finally got to meet up after a while, and there were a few things that I gathered or learned about you that I wanted to share, if you're willing to let me share. So the first thing is, you and your wife appear to be avid gardeners, and I was so impressed with you're growing plums and blueberries and all of the vegetables and herbs. And was there like a peach tree that you just planted?
I got the new peach tree. Yeah.
I love it. So I love that about you. I got to meet Ellie, your dog, finally, who is literally my new bestie. She does curl up next to you mostly, but I will say there was a moment where I feel like her and I had a moment.
Okay.
So really appreciate that. Actually, there's 4 things. The third is your son is incredible. He is so bright, so personable. He wants to be a soccer player professionally. Love his dreams. That's awesome. And then the 4th, which I wouldn't have known this, but I was I don't know why I'm so impressed by it, but apparently you're a fantastic chef. And I love that you love to cook, and that you're the cook. I mean, Juliana cooks too, but you are the one that cooks, I think, maybe the majority of the meals, but you cooked my eggs and they were fantastic. So just some great observations that I appreciaed. And, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So 1 and 4 to go together, right? Because I really don't like to garden or do anything, but I like to use that stuff in what we cook, right? And then, as you know, my wife is an obesity specialist or expert physician. And so therefore we spend a lot of time trying to think about how to cook healthy foods for our son, who you mentioned, and then also for our dog, who gets a lot of the byproducts of a lot of things that we make. So yeah, so it was great. It was really great to have you here and get to see you after, it's probably been a long time since we've been in the same room. We got to hang out a couple times. So it was awesome.
Yeah. It was great. Thank you for having us. It was lovely to see you. Well, thank you for indulging. Shall we get to the deets?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to start us off here. Okay. We're going to talk about Nike, right? So this is from the Toronto Sun, which I'm told has just reappeared after days of toxic smoke and wildfires. Canada blocked it. That's the wrong Sun. So Nike is planning to unveil a gender inclusive line for kids called Kids One Fit as part of its Pride celebrations this month, here in the month of June. So this reporting, this was leaked from emails posted on Twitter, always the most reliable source. I can only guess as part of, as you know, there's this manufactured one-sided culture war. And I think that in the context of the way it was revealed on Twitter, it was like, look at Nike, look how woke they are to try to drum up support against some of the things that they're doing. But I don't think, Nadia, that this is a company that can scare easily. And this is, in keeping in their trends as a company that is very inclusive in terms of their product design. So they've released accessible no-tie shoes. They've worked to have mannequins in their stores of all sizes. We know they supported Colin.
They were one of the first companies that created like a sports hijab for Muslim women.
There you go. And they were, there when there was blowback against Colin Kaepernick, they did not back down. They in fact featured him in a number of their ads. And so they also had to deal with Dylan Mulvaney, who, as you know, loves Bud Light and can't get enough Bud Light. Yes. And so they've made it a point that they don't back down. As the company, they stick with their athletes and their beliefs. And I think they're probably one of the best examples that we have of a company saying, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. And they've done quite well, obviously. Any thoughts on Nikes?
Sure. Well, one, I'd love to talk to somebody from Nike. So like, if you're listening, like, please come join us on Inclusive Collective. Yeah, I mean, great on Nike for doing this. Like you mentioned, all those examples of how they continuously, are trying to be inclusive, provide accessibility to people that are craving their products. I think it's a really great example too of how they're listening to their employee base as well as their customer base, right? And as long as their folks are receptive to it. And I think it's unlike corporations like Target, like we just noticed, who are still kind of getting heat from I think they had like a tuck friendly swimsuit that people were outrageously criticizing and kind of demolishing going into stores. And I feel like they kind of took a stance where they kind of retracted selling that product. And I feel like Nike, like you said, is just very like, no, this is what we stand for. These are our values. We're going to continue to push what serves our employees and our customer base, what is doing the right thing. And perfect timing for Pride. So great. I think it's great all around.
Yeah, their mission statement. Do you know their mission statement?
I don't.
I don't know if it was. I think that's their slogan. So it is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete, right? And so that is what they lead with, and that's how they choose to think about what practices they're going to engage in as a company, both for their employees and for their customers. And so they use it as a way to start internal discussions, right? How they're going to design for everyone with a body, right? And so they can be rock solid in standing behind their athletes and then supporting them no matter what comes in terms of conservative activists trying to make them change course, right?
Like back down.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I love that. That was a great story. Thank you for sharing. Shall we go on to the next? So, okay. Mesa, Arizona. I was trying to remember. I don't even remember on the map where Mesa is. Is it near Tucson?
It is near Phoenix.
Okay, great. Thank you I just wanted to like visually depict it. So Mesa, Arizona is the first U.S. autism-friendly city, according to the BBC. So Mesa is the first ever autism-certified city in the U.S. designated by the IBCCES, which is the International Board of Credentialing Continuing Education Standards. This was launched by Visit Mesa, the leading regional destination marketing organization, to encourage businesses to participate in specialized autism training geared toward executives and front-facing hospitality and service staff to better recognize autism spectrum disorder, of course, ASD for many of those acronym
Hmm.
wise, and service the needs of ASD travelers from the planning stages of a vacation to where they arrive in their destination. What's really cool about this, Rob, is like more than 500 Mesa Parks and Rec community facilities employees have been certified. 1,200 plus Mesa Police Department, public safety and law enforcement individuals were also involved in getting training certification. And and there's over 4,000 community
Mm.
members within Mesa itself that have completed the certification as well, which is just really cool to see. Your thoughts?
Well, a couple things. I just thought it was a really inspiring story of activism as well. So the person that they cited here was Mark Gutierrez. He had a son who was autistic, and from traveling, he noticed that a lot of the hospitality industry was not set up to work with folks that are on the autism spectrum. And so there was some data there that 87% of autistic families don't take vacations, according to a survey, because it's just very
Yes.
difficult and it's hard to plan. And so I thought it was just a great, inspiring story of activism, of taking action to change that environment for everyone there in Mesa, Arizona. And I think that as a city, they will profit from it, right? I think that there will be a lot of
Yeah.
people that seek out ways to enjoy that particular town. I know baseball spring training's there. They have a great natural history museum, right? So go ahead and
Oh,
visit Mesa.
wow, you know a lot about Mesa. Okay.
I
I
but
didn't
it
know
made
that.
me think, wow, there's,
Yeah.
is it somewhere that I could work into to my schedule as well? And so other cities
Right.
working towards certification: Palm Springs, High Point, North Carolina, Visalia, California, and Toledo, Ohio, Nadia. So great job,
Oh,
Toledo,
all right.
Ohio, right? But I
Good
think,
job, Toledo.
and then 1 in 36 kids in 2020 were diagnosed with autism. And so this is something that cities, tourist attractions, hospitality industry should really be thinking about. How do they gain this certification? And so I thought it was great, and I learned a lot just from this particular story and the efforts of Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah, I also just think it's really important for people like public service, law enforcement, people in kind of the public service environment to also be
Mm,
certified in understanding and learning really how to engage and welcome folks who are living with ASD. And so um, I think there could be things that we learn from this when we think of other neurodivergent peoples or people with different
right.
backgrounds. Um, and so I'm not going to go down a whole spiral because I can here, but I do think that I want to kind of keep an eye on this because I think there's some really cool learnings that could come out of it as we study it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think I just don't think that if you are a town with a tourism industry, which 90% of towns want people to visit and come and spend money,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't look at this and say, okay, well, this is something that we need to do in order to be more welcoming and inclusive and get on the radar.
Yay,
Yay,
Mesa.
Mesa, Arizona. Awesome. Thanks for that, Nadia. Let's take a
Yeah.
quick break and get back to it in a minute here with more deets from the world of inclusion. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Inclusive Collective. Nadia and I are going through a few of the stories from the world of inclusion. Nadia, what do you have next for us?
Rob. So, according to the NPR, the new Spider-Man movie, but also by the way, like I didn't even realize there's always a new
There's always a
Spider-Man
new
movie
Spider.
like
I've
every
lost track of
summer.
the Spider-Man movies. Yeah.
I have lost track. Okay. So, anyways, the new Spider Man film shows that representation is a winning strategy. So, the box office figures and the demographic data for moviegoers have actually painted a very clear picture for this industry that representation matters. Um, Miles Morales, a Puerto Rican Afro Latino teenager from Brooklyn who has been part of Marvel for years, apparently is part of this movie. The film grossed $208 million dollars worldwide on opening weekend.
Nice.
The main hero, portrayed by Shamik Moore, featured several Spider Women, as well as the India-based Spider person, Paviter Prabhakar. I apologize if I enunciated your name incorrectly. Um, and the new Spider-Man film shows that representation is a winning strategy. So, Rob, again, like this might be my aging process showing, but I really had like no idea that there was another Spider-Man movie out. The only reason I learned that there was not only because of this article, but because my best friend's daughter, who is 18,
Okay.
loves Spider-Man and went. And so, for real though, this is great representation on the screen. Really matters for all to see. So really, I'm happy to hear this, and maybe I'll be heading to the
Yeah, I think
movies
you
this
should. So
weekend.
I got a 5-star review from the woman who cut my hair this week at Great Clips.
Oh,
So, yeah. So
awesome!
they do a pretty good
Yeah,
job. I wouldn't say it was a great
yeah.
clip that I got. I'd say it's like an
I
above
mean,
average clip.
but
They should change it to an above average clip. But the one just as
I
an
think it
aside,
looks great,
just as
Rob.
an aside, I had to as I was
Yeah.
thinking about that, like the pandemic,
Mhm.
really made me not care who cuts my hair. Is like that was like my big takeaway
I
from the
know.
pandemic. I'm starting to think maybe I should get something above average clip. But so anyway, great
Okay.
review. Really long review over the course of my
Yeah.
great clip. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that and the first one was really good. And then so it's something that I actually do want to see because I watched the first one with my son. It's fantastic.
Sure.
And so they said this was even
Yeah.
better. The young woman who cut my hair. So
Cool.
I think that this works, right? I think because it's in context of the story, right? So they're
Yeah.
universe hopping since you haven't seen it. And therefore, it makes sense that in an alternate universe, there's a Puerto Rican Spider-Man, there's an Indian Spider-Man,
Mhm.
there's Spider Women, and so it makes sense. It doesn't have to be a white dude as your universe hopping, right? And so I would
Yeah.
say
Okay.
that tokenism,
So we're not going to see Richard Dreyfuss.
yeah, that's where I was going, right? So tokenism, Richard Dreyfuss is my new favorite thing to talk about, but
I know. I
tokenism
know.
doesn't work, right? It doesn't add value. But if you can come up with a formula like this in the context of the movie, then you really have something. So we know that superhero movies are made to be blasted around the world, right? That's why most of the
Yes.
movies that are made these days are superhero movies because they can be sent around the world, but it's still usually like the same story blasted around the world. This is a little bit different because it's
Mhm.
very much in context of the story that there's all these different uh, characters and all these different versions of Spider-Man. So I think if you come up with something like that, then it's a
Got it.
really winning
Yep.
formula. And it just adds
Yeah. It's a
to
win-win.
the appeal of that particular story, which is why, Nadia, Richard Dreyfuss, that still bothers me, right? So no one
I know
told
it
Richard
does.
Dreyfuss that he has to cast a black actor to play, something that's obviously a white character. Like no one, like if he wants to make a movie about Babe Ruth, he doesn't have to cast a black actor
Yeah.
to play Babe Ruth or something like that. So,
Right.
it's no one told the people that made this movie, Spider-Man, that didn't set out to
Mhm.
make a diverse movie. They were making a creative movie. And therefore
Yes.
it just worked out that way. And so I think that, and you can see that there's tons of success to be had in creating these very authentic stories that feel natural and are presented as such. So great movie, great clips,
Great
yeah.
movie. All right. I think sold. I might have to go see it this weekend. I don't know about this weekend. Maybe in a few weeks I'll go see it
I thought
for
you were going
sure.
to say you had to go get a haircut at Great Clips. No, no.
No.
Okay.
No. No. I get my hair done by a stylist. He's wonderful. Not that
Yeah, I
yours isn't,
mean,
but but like I got a lot to work with over here.
yeah. So let's talk about Mark Cuban, the billionaire, the guy on the. Have you been watching the NBA Finals or the NBA playoffs, Nadia?
I wasn't, but it was on the background a
Okay.
lot, either like with
So he has the
family. Yeah.
commercial
Yep.
where he's Mark Cuban. He's trying to sell tube socks. Have you seen that one?
Yes. That's why when I read it, I was like, oh, I get
Yes,
it.
yes. So owner of the Dallas Mavericks basketball team
Yes.
says
Shark
Shark
Tank,
Tank. He's the guy on the
right?
far
Like
left. He never invested
yeah.
in anything. So he says, "Call me woke." Right. So Cuban told an audience on Mackinac Island, which I had to look geographically. That's in Michigan. I don't know if it's in Lake
Michigan.
Michigan or
Yeah.
Lake Superior, somewhere up there in the Great Lakes region.
Yeah.
Said, and I'll read the quote. He said, call me woke. You don't need to call it DEI. You can call it whatever you want. I call it good business. It means taking the people that you're selling to and making sure that your workforce looks like them and making sure that you can reflect their values and be able to connect to that. That's what works for me. What do you think, Nadia?
So, listen, my hypothesis is spot on. White men are going to influence other white men. So, and this is through observation that I hypothesize this, and then I have been finding this in my observations. So, if Mark Cuban can reach people of the dominant group, then great, because that's less work for me to have to do that. The other item here is that I really appreciate him sharing his sentiments. Like, he's using his power and his privilege and his platform to convey like this experience and value to other business folks, right? To people that are willing, maybe hopefully willing to listen, and that he may have influence over. I don't know if you, when I was reading the article, there were a couple of articles that were written about this particular situation, and he kind of got political, and I'm curious if like this is maybe him setting himself up to run for office. Like, what do you think, Mark Cuban 2024?
I mean, he's talked about this in previous cycles, and so I think there's part of it. I think that.
Oh, like you really believe it? I didn't
No,
actually believe it. I was just like, oh, I thought you were gonna
he's talked
laugh.
about it.
Okay,
He's
so this is
considered
like,
it. I think that there's several really rich people considering, is there an opportunity for a third party candidate if you have to
yeah,
essentially unacceptable alternatives in the general election for the
oh my god.
majority of people.
Well,
And so I think there's a
yeah,
lot of it there. I do think that folks in the business community that, that think like Mark Cuban are a little bit frustrated with some of the, as I called earlier, manufactured one-sided culture war. And I think that he said the politicians that were there is just saying, look, this is, you should be thinking about how to improve the lives of your constituents, not thinking about how do I get the most followers on Twitter by bashing a certain group, which is most often and most
yeah,
recently the LGBTQ plus community. And so I think that there's some frustration there from business leaders a lot. And so not that business leaders are that great in their records sometimes, but I think that they're better than our political class at this juncture, right? So, and just to echo that, right? So I had a lot of the similar thoughts, right? So I was trying to think about a place where the way he called it out and saying like this is good business, like where is that not true, right? So there's not a grand revelation here, right, Nadia? I mean, I
yeah,
think,
right.
and I was thinking about this again in the context of Pride Month and some of the issues that we've been seeing, and this is where conservatives are focusing their culture war efforts, and it seems like it's a very, very small minority, right? And I think that the politicians are paying attention to it more than everyone else. And so this, just for example, this is from Human Rights Campaign. Nationally, 8 in 10 Americans favor laws that would protect LGBTQ plus people against discrimination in jobs, public accommodations, and housing. In a place like Florida, where there is currently a ban on using the word gay in schools, 80% support protections and 66% oppose discrimination based on religion. Right. So, and you can just keep going over and over, like the different conservative states. Republicans nationally, 2/3 of Republicans support protections against discrimination and oppose religious-based discrimination and exclusion. So
That's a
you can't
higher
you
number than
can't
I
get
thought. Yeah,
80% of the
but go
people
ahead.
in this
Yeah,
country to agree on anything, right? And so
I know.
Mark Cuban shouldn't get a ton of credit for stating the obvious. But as you said, if this is what it takes to reach folks,
Privilege and
if you're a
power.
business leader,
Yeah.
you can't figure out how to respond to accusations of being woke, just repeat what Mark Cuban said. I think you'll be good, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got a billionaire saying something. I mean, I think that's like, we listen, we don't want to listen, but like when someone like Elon Musk talks, like people tune in, right? Like
Unfortunately.
unfortunately. And I think the same thing could be true with Mark Cuban, is like he has power, he has privilege, he's a billionaire, he has a number of
Mm-hmm.
businesses, and people, when he listens, when he speaks, people will listen. And so like I said, if he's going to be able to influence a group of people that I may not be able to influence, then, so be it.
Yeah. One more thing, you notice that he didn't say, I can make a shit ton of money by doing it this way. He says it's about connecting to your customers and employees and their values. And so I think that is the thread that I've started to see a little bit of, just that maybe it's a values case that we need to be paying attention to and not necessarily a business case. And that may move the needle forward and shift the conversation in the right and correct direction. You can get people to think about, and businesses to think about, connecting to their employees and customers' values.
Rob, I'm going to start quoting you on that. I love that. We need to start thinking about values-based versus business case. Like, I think we've been struggling with like this business case, being able to lay it out and what it means for the business. It's like, well, it's values. And I love that sentiment. So thank you for sharing that. All right, folks. Well, that wraps up for the deets this week. Stay with us. We'll be right back with our raves and rants. Hello, folks. Welcome back, everyone. It's that time for rants and raves. We did the coin toss. Rob,
did we do the coin toss? I think
we did. I did it. I think
we
you
never
walked
got any
away.
Good sound effects on the coin toss. Let's see if we can work that in.
Well, maybe Ari will be able to bring one in. We'll find out.
All right.
Ari's
so
our production.
I have both a rant and then a tiny rave, or a big rave, but a rave for 5 impressive teenagers in Boston that formed the Hyde Square Task Force. And they went out and they compared food prices at Stop and Shop grocery stores in a less affluent part of Jamaica Plain, as you know, my old neighborhood, to prices in a more affluent area just a couple of miles away. And they found that food prices were about 18% higher in the less affluent area. Yikes. So the rant part is the fact that this is bullshit and there's absolutely corporate profit taking, when you see inflation that we're all dealing with. And so this is also, I suspect, an example of some of the negative impact of analytics, right? So companies using data to squeeze profits in the places where they can, targeting those that use food stamps, and then driving up the prices of basic goods in those particular areas. So come on, Stop and Shop, right? And then in the article, they said that just down the street, they were opening a food pantry from the places where they were gouging people with food stamps. And so instead of gouging people at your stores and then opening a food pantry down the street, how about just making food affordable in the first place for all of your customers where they need it?
Stop and Shop, do better. Wow. All right. Well, should we end on a rave?
Let's do it. Yes. Let's always.
Always. Okay. Lin-Manuel Miranda launched the Rise Theater Directory, intended to promote the hiring of more underrepresented producers, crew members, and theater employees. This is like a hiring type tool that's being created, and this will be in support of to increase the number of women, non-binary folks, and people of color who work in or behind the scene roles. And this was launched on June 8th. So really excited that, we're making efforts to have more representation in the arts and creative.
Amazing. Nice job, Lin-Manuel Miranda. I still can't forgive him for the Mary Poppins sequel, whatever that was. But
okay. It wasn't that terrible.
I had to sit through it. But sure, but great job in this particular project, right? There's good and bad with everyone, absolutely. Right? So that's our friend of the show, Lin-Manuel Miranda. All right, Nadia, I think that wraps it up for Inclusive Collective this week. Thanks so much. Another episode of Inclusive Collective in the books. So Inclusive Collective is a production of Rifelion Media. We would love to hear from you. And I know a lot of shows say that, and they don't necessarily mean it, but we really mean it here at Inclusive Collective. So shoot us an email at inclusivecollective@rifelion.com. You can say anything. We can talk about anything. I'll get back to you. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok if you like what you heard.
And YouTube.
Yeah, no, we're doing a lot of people signing up on YouTube channels as well. So definitely check us out on YouTube. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and rate us wherever you get your podcasts or videos, as we just said about YouTube. If you want to get in touch with us for consulting, check out Nadia at nasconsultants.com and Rob at TecanoConsulting.com. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Thanks, Nadia.